All of a sudden I saw an email back. It was Mark Cuban. I'm like, is somebody messing with me? This is a joke.
Way. What's going on, you guys? Nolan here, and today I'm very excited to announce a new playlist on this channel called Cabana Convos. It's an interview portion of the channel where you'll have conversations in, and I know you guessed it, cabanas. It's an opportunity for us to get a little deeper and also to focus a little more on things like college and career-related activities and a little less on side hustles. Our first guest today is Adam Faris. He's the founder of a tech startup called Shred. Was also a finalist in a highly competitive VC competition. You don't want to hear about it from me though. Let's go meet Adam. All right, Adam, well, it's great to have you here, man. I'm super excited to get into this. I know you've been a mentor to me in the past and just a super interesting story, so I won't waste any time kind of diving right in here, but will you just tell me a little bit about the story behind your startup, Shred? And for somebody who's never really heard about it, like just kind of guide them through the basics of what your company is and what it does.
Yeah. First off, thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here as well.
Yeah.
We always have some great conversations. And
totally.
Yeah, the origins of Shred really started with an interest in the kind of on-demand last mile transportation space. And so we saw an interesting opportunity where there was a significant rise in a lot of these electric scooter companies. You see Bird, Lime, etc.
Totally.
But nobody, and they were kind of launching in large metropolitan cities. And we didn't really ever see any companies focusing strictly on college campuses. And at the time, of course, as you know, I was a college student, as were you. And we're just like, all right, we don't have any scooters, and we have a few of these bikes and such on campus, but there's not really another option. And we know that there's a specific type of demographic that loves scooters, but we also said, hey, there's probably a significant demographic that loves something else. And so we said, hey, what if we created kind of a last mile unique offering that was an electric longboard that users didn't have to purchase and they could just rent in kind of an on-demand fashion. So kind of rolled with that and really garnered I think it was like 6 LOIs with different universities, and it was USC, LMU, Portland State, just to name a few. And
for someone who doesn't know what an LOI is.
Yeah, it's a letter of intent. So it's basically just saying, hey, we are open to having your operation on our campus.
So these 6 universities were like, we're totally in support of this. But if you guys get a prototype and all that worked out, like, we will have these on our campus.
Totally, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, which we were totally blown away and shocked by. We thought it was going to be significantly more challenging. I think that playing the student card had a kind of a significant role in that. But and so we just kind of kept gaining these LOIs, and we started building prototypes, and over time there was significant consolidation in the sort of last mile space, and so you saw a lot of these smaller scooter companies getting honestly either dissolved because of just the capital intensity of that kind of business, or they're being purchased by these larger companies such as Bird or Lime. And so we said, look, we're like not even a mouse, we're like an ant in this space right now, and we still believe in this on-demand model and this sort of electric longboard model on college campuses. But what if we kind of put that in the back seat and kind of put that in our back pocket and just focused on what was our initial long-term strategy, was kind of being this ubiquitous app for on-demand experiences, and really finding booking and inviting friends to things that people love to do in the outdoors, and having that be a really accessible and convenient way to do so. So that's what we really transitioned the Shred focus of business into.
Okay, so you guys kept the name, and now you've kind of transitioned the focus, but keeping this other idea in your back pocket.
Definitely. Okay,
and how far did you guys get with the on-demand longboard idea?
Yeah, so we got pretty far. So we, along with the 6 LOIs, we were kind of initially starting to build a kind of a small board of advisors, board of directors around our business, and we had actually garnered the attention of one of the co-founders of Lime, which was super cool, and he had since left the company, so he was able to be kind of on our board, and had an app prototype, had a bunch of hardware, like physical board-based prototypes that people could actually ride around and test. And that's kind of about how far we got. We were planning a couple different test launches, but again, kind of given the climate of the business and the space and the industry and how things were rolling, we just kind of said, hey, let's pull this back and really just see how this kind of pans out, and then really focused our efforts on this experience-based app. So.
Okay, and if I remember correctly, you guys also went to, is it the Dorm Room Fund? Is that?
Yeah, yeah, totally. So Dorm Room Fund, they're kind of a student-based VC fund, venture capital fund. So they, they obviously vet a lot of startup ideas and concepts, and they'll often infuse, I think it's about 20K,
wow.
and there's no sort of terms of equity. It's really just mentorship. I don't believe they take a percentage of equity. It's been a while since I've looked at their site, but they're kind of a subsidiary of a really well-known venture capital fund. And to be honest, I'm kind of blanking on it. It's either first round capital or something else.
Okay,
but
I think I've heard of that.
Yeah, and so. But what's really interesting is why you bring that up is that the majority, and they're great firm and such, but the majority of the companies that they bring in are these really profound, mostly Ivy League universities. And so we got the email back and the call back saying, hey, we'd love to continue discussion. And we went through, I'd say it was about 4 or 5 rounds of diligence screening.
Oh my gosh.
And for those of you that may not know, diligence screening is just they kind of look in depth into your company, what the projections look like, if you have any traction, etc. Really defining the legitimacy. Got to about I think it was the last round with one of the main kind of managing partners of the fund. Excuse me. And didn't move forward, unfortunately, but we were just really grateful for that opportunity to even move that far forward and learned a lot from that experience. So.
That's a big deal coming from a school like U of O then. To get that far, and even though you didn't get the money, like just that practicing the pitch and to say you even were a finalist, like totally super impressive.
We were really surprised. I mean, we were just kind of shooting blind, We're we're just gonna give this a shot and see what happens. And it was really cool to get that email back and kind of confirm at least some validation of, hey, this is this might have legs. This might be a legitimate concept that we can continue to move forward. So that's
super cool. So would you say you were more nervous going into that first due diligence pitch, or how did that kind of progress through?
What's interesting is that one of the partners that we spoke with, his name is David Mechanic. I think he's a grad student at the Stanford School of Business, I believe, right now. And we've kind of kept in touch off and on. And his demeanor was just so comforting. He was he was kind of he said he was a longboarder himself and loved the space and loved this idea and loved riding the scooters around. And so he was just really comforting and just kind of made it feel like we were just having a conversation like this. And it wasn't really intimidating. And I've also, in every investor type meeting I've had, I obviously respect the individual, but I know that there's hundreds if not thousands of others that I could just go to if they said no. And you kind of have to have that mindset of, hey, if this person says no, I'm not going to shut down and cry, maybe for a little bit. But there's plenty of other people that might have an interest and are also in this space looking to invest. So.
Totally. I think that piece of resilience is so important for somebody doing what you're doing, trying to start a company.
Definitely.
So just transitioning a little bit more into the modern Shred app and what it's become. How's that going so far? What's that process been like?
Really good. Yeah. So just to clarify, so we kind of put that board concept aside, and as you mentioned, we're fully focused on this ubiquitous-based sort of experience app, and things are going really, really well. We're in development of the app, so it's not live on the App Store yet. But we kind of, obviously it's an interesting time for everybody, obviously given the virus and a multitude of other things. But we kind of viewed that as, and I want to carefully use opportunity here, but to launch kind of a support initiative through this Shred app. And so what we did was through other industry partnerships, through just kind of our own internal grassroots marketing stuff, we would call up a lot of these operators and say, hey, we've got this app in the works, but we're really pushing to have the site go live, feature you on the site. And push any sort of sales engagement, anything we can to your site so that consumers can say, hey, either donate or purchase a gift card for future use. A lot of these companies took the proper hygiene and health ramifications to, be able to offer these experiences. And so we just want to give them the viewership that they deserve, and so that they can kind of stay alive in this time. We don't take any monetary value. There's, we don't take a commission or anything. And got some really awesome testimonials from not only customers that came through our site and purchased something on the third-party site that offered these experiences, and also the operators that were offering these experiences. So it's been a great past few months, working on this initiative and also working on our app development.
No, that's super cool. I think with everything going on with COVID, just the state of the world right now, like that social mission piece is so important.
Totally. I think it's absolutely paramount to have, no matter what stage no matter what stage kind of your business is in, whether it's small startup or, a large multinational, to have a charitable philanthropic kind of give back. I think that's absolutely paramount in these days. So totally.
So what's that been like so far? Like how have the results been? And then you also mentioned an app. Like where are you along in that process?
Yeah, totally. So we're really early on in the app development. We've just been working with a third-party company out of Portland. They're called Parthenon, excuse me. And they've kind of taken our project in with full hand, with all their capabilities. Yeah, with arms. And so it's been great. We basically had the full wireframe, the whole UX UI built out already. Wow. So they basically said, wow, this makes it pretty easy, and they might come back to us with some minimal questions like, hey, what do you think about this little feature? Do you want to do this? Because, you know, as we mentioned, as we talked about before off camera, is you know, I think it's a mistake to come out with your full product. And really be able to test the market with sort of an MVP, kind of a minimum, you know, viable products. Yeah. And as long as it gets to A to B, you know, I love the analogy of you build this Toyota Corolla, test the market, and you know your plans are to build the Bentley, but you got to start by proving that market and finding your product market fit with your consumers. So
yeah, no, I love that analogy. Yeah, it's like you don't have to start out with the Bentley; you just have to start somewhere. Yeah, you know? and then build your way through.
Totally. And as for the support initiative, I mean, it's been, fantastic. We done this past month. We've done a little over, I think it was like around 10,000. Wow. And again, we don't have any sort of payment platform, you know, payment system integrated into our site because we don't.
So that's going straight to these outdoor outfitter companies.
Straight to them. So they just you know, resort back to us and say, hey, we got, you know, more people that have said they come from your site, and that's just a really, really great feeling. Oh, I'm sure. And honestly, it could be even more than 10,000. We just did a quick little accounting and said, hey, it's about 10K that we've done this past couple months. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, and that's just, there's no, you know, we put no capital investment into marketing, and so that's just been kind of a natural you know, engagement in sales through not only our site and our social media, but also other brand partnerships, industry partnerships. So
nice. And then you mentioned that you have operators on your website, right?
Yeah.
Okay. How many do you guys have so far?
So great question. So I yesterday I added 3 or 4 more. Oh, wow. And so I think we're up to a little over 85 right now.
That's a lot.
My goal is to get 100 by like mid next week. Yeah. So we're pushing towards 100, but yeah, we have about a little over 85. I think we're like 87 right now. So,
okay.
Yeah.
That's very impressive. So do you just call them up and be like, hey, I'm Adam, like I'm starting this startup and I want to help you? Like
Totally. And you bring up an interesting point because it's you know, one of our board members, his name's Greg Hoffman. He just such a really thoughtful guy, and I had a call with him about 2 days ago, and he goes, you know, and it's such a trite thing to say, but he just has such an eloquent way of putting it. He said, Adam, don't forget that words matter in the eyes of the consumer, in the eyes of the operator. And so when I would be reaching out to these operators, you're exactly right. The pitch changes. And so I would there was a week where I probably called about 300 operators, just picked up the phone, rang the numbers, kind of gave them the speech, gave them the pitch, and it kind of molded over time to what started as probably like a minute long, and people were like, hurry up, and are you trying to screw me over or something? And we were like, no, we're just trying to be helpful. And of course I was a student at the time, so I kind of used a student card, but you know, we kind of rephrased it because it's there's so much kind of consumer psychology in this. And so we really changed the narrative to, hey, we'd like to highlight your company on our site. And, you know, we can't necessarily promise sales, but we can promise engagement and an audience on your story. We'll obviously include your links to where they can purchase and kind of go from there. So
that's really cool. So the way you phrased it, and you were telling the truth and saying, like, there's no downside to this for you, you know? Yeah. Like, we really can only help you guys.
Totally.
And that really changed the way that they were saying no and responding to your guys' phone calls.
Totally. Okay. I'd say the conversion rate, I mean, gosh, it probably like doubled to tripled.
Wow.
So it went from, you know, maybe every 5 I'd get 1 or 2, maybe every 10 I'd get 1 or 2, to, I mean, pretty much every single one, probably like 4 out of 5 would be like, yeah. And that sounds great, and love to hear about your app once that comes out too. So
that's so cool.
Yeah.
So what are some of your long-term goals for this app? Like, if I were to ask you, where is Shred in 10 years? Like, what is that vision for you?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So we're still, to be completely honest, we're still defining what that 10-year outlook looks like.
Okay.
Excuse me, but you know, we really want to be that go-to app for outdoor experiences. You know, we think that there's a sort of a specific demographic of user that uses, say, TripAdvisor or Airbnb experiences that offer, you know, a multitude of awesome experiences, whether it's like a walking tour of the Louvre or, you know, a walking tour of some museum, you know, you name it, could be like Japanese gardens, whatever. We don't focus on that, and that's totally fine.
Okay.
We really focus on these kind of GoPro-esque experiences. So surf, ski, snow, snorkeling, whitewater rafting, the things that people really enjoy and love to do with their friends and family, but there also is an element of kind of thrill and extremist in that. And so really focus on the full gamut of that.
Yeah.
But that's what the specific niche that we're focused on. So I think that really building around that to answer your question and just continuing to dive into various different verticals, whether it's gear rental, whether it's, you know, kind of black tie service or something like that, or even kind of having like a white label software based solution where we can then go to other you know, companies that want to get in this space is another kind of ancillary thing that we've looked at. And also there's a huge data play here, of course, with the consumers approval, but there's a huge data play to really help enhance the user experience.
And how would you describe like your target market for who would most likely be using this app and going there consistently?
Definitely. So we have 3 main columns of demographic that we focus on. So there's kind of a thrillist, and that's the really niche focused individual that you know, skydives and does these crazy rock climbing things, maybe on a weekend basis. But the majority of our market is really family and also just kind of a group of friends. And it's pretty broad in a sense of we focus on the West Coast initially, improving our market because it just kind of makes sense to focus on that market. But yeah, I mean, you know, we really focus on the 18 to 35 age range. They're most adept to kind of having this and expect a convenient, well-rounded technology to get them from A to B. You know, whether that's finding an experience and booking it. So yeah, we really focus on those kind of three markets.
Okay, so Thrillist. And I'm sorry, I missed the other two. Was it West Coast?
So sorry, I went around. So broadly speaking, it's West Coast, just to start off as a region. But it's really those 3 markets are the Thrillist, the adventurous, kind of the extreme individual, almost like you'd see in like GoPro videos. Then there's friends and family. Or, excuse me, there's friends. There's a friend group. So maybe myself, you, and James would go mountain biking, and then there's, you know, a family where they might not necessarily do the level 5 rapids. They might do like the level -0 rapids and make sure that it's kind of safe for everybody in the family. So those kind of the three segments.
Awesome, dude. It seemed, when you present this idea to me, and I've heard it before, but it just sounds like something that should already be made. It seems so useful. It's just something I can envision being used so well by people. Like, it's crazy. Have you had any major competitors, anyone else who's kind of trying to do the same thing here?
So that's a great question. We've thought about that a lot, and obviously there are kind of a plethora of competitors, whether it is Expedia, TripAdvisor, Airbnb, but nobody has this focus on this really adventure outdoor space as we do. And yeah, there's other platforms that allow you to find a large breadth of experiences in geo-focused locations. But again, our age of consumer, 35 and below, places such an importance on the user experience and having it be simple, convenient, you know, basically getting you from finding something to getting you out there and actually experiencing it. In like 2 to 3 clicks, that there's not really a platform or app that does that. You know, I mean, not to bag on TripAdvisor, but that's kind of an example we use is one of our board members has said, look, I love TripAdvisor. They have great experiences, but it's not, you know, my son who just booked something through them said he had to start a group chat, and they tried to find an experience, and there wasn't really anything that was personalized, and then once they found something, he had to disperse payments, and it was like, you Venmo me, oh, you can only do cash, crap, okay. So it's just this you know, archaic,
very inconvenient.
Totally, and it's like we want to have the utmost easiest way to get you from A to B out experiencing life, because that's what people value.
Totally. That's awesome. So I think a huge part of starting any startup is acquiring funding. And just, what has that been like? I'm so curious. I've never done anything like it. Like, like, what is it like to sit down in front of investors and pitch? And where are you guys at in that process?
Totally, yeah. So it's the high level answer is that it's taxing as heck.
Really?
You just want to focus on the day-to-day operations of the business. You want to. I would much rather have those personable conversations and explaining how we can benefit operators and bring them onto the platform. But I mean, you have to do it, right? You have to reach out to these investors. You have to raise the proper funds to be able to have a significant runway so that you can stay alive. Excuse me. And that's been a learning process. I want to credit, you know, definitely not myself for the majority, but Connor Bussey, who's my co-founder, and Brian Johnston, who's the other co-founder of Shred. Brian's Rolodex of individuals that has really helped in starting the conversation, getting the excitement kind of going around what we're working on. And then Connor, he just, as well as Brian, they just, you know, the juggernaut that is funding terms is extremely broad.
Really?
And a lot of the difficulty with funding is diving into term sheets and saying, hey, this is exactly what they mean by this. This is what they're taking with this. This is what you're giving up with this term. And that can be tricky. And I think it's important that and honestly, it's the investor's job to be pessimistic, right? And to do their diligence and put on a black hat and say, here's why this won't work. What's your rebuttal to that? How are you going to make this work? So to answer your question, it's been tricky, but it's been a great learning experience. And from what I've heard, knock on wood, hopefully, is that after your first kind of successful raise, after your first influx of money, it becomes significantly easier to raise after that. It's just finding that first investor is a little bit tricky, and we have we have around 50K right now invested. And so we just finished an investor video. We just re-updated our deck, and so we're planning on kind of doing a full-fledged raise kind of early September, because a lot of investors, unfortunately, are just totally off the map in August time right now.
Messed up right now.
Yeah, but I mean, it gives us a great time to focus on our service, and even bringing on more operators and showing that we have more traction and are creating more value. So.
Totally, yeah. From what I understand of acquiring investing, it's a bit of a numbers game, right? Like you mentioned, you can't get negative if somebody turns you down. Like you just have to keep knocking on that door.
Totally.
Until you break it down, pretty much.
Yeah. It's I mean, you just gotta have this thick skin, you're gonna hear no's, and you're gonna hear people that completely shoot down your idea, and you're gonna question yourself and be like, am I doing this right? Is this really worth it? And you just gotta stick to your belief. And again, that's the investor job, is to be pessimistic and figure out the reasons why it won't work.
Totally. Yeah. So one thing I definitely wanted to ask about in this interview is the idea of age, because you graduated from college a number of weeks ago, I believe.
Yeah.
A month, 2 max.
Yeah.
And you mentioned playing the student card, which sounds like it was a huge resource tool in your pocket. But what would be your description of age, and how that's either helped or hurted you in starting your own company?
Yeah. Great question. Yeah. I think that people our age that are seeking to start something, unfortunately, kind of put up this mental barrier of, because I'm younger, I'm less experienced, that I can't go out and raise funds, or I can't go out and even start a business. And I always look to push aside that fallacy, and I always push people to get experience. There's nothing wrong, in my opinion, with getting experience by doing. And so, but you got to kind of know your stuff, right? So if you come off as, I'm starting this thing, and you've missed some key elements of information, well, the investor is going to be like, well, this guy has no idea what he's talking about. Or even people that you might be trying to bring on, whether it's operators or board members.
You need to do your research.
Yeah. But I mean, in my experience, I would say I've had quite a few meetings with that have started initially through an email or a phone conversation. We got to in person, whether that was industry partnerships, or it was for investment, and most people didn't even bat an eyeball.
Wow.
And I think I'm honestly still kind of figuring that out. I think it's really an element of confidence, as well as just being well-rounded in your industry, and kind of knowing kind of the things that investors will look forward to kind of poke you on. It's like, okay, what about this? I mean, what about COVID, decreasing travel? It's like, well, there's significant locality, right? I mean, people are the RV space is up 200, 400% because people are wanting to travel to and from 500 miles and less, but still want to go experience in the great outdoors with their friends and family. Yeah. So you just have to be immersed in your space and really know how to answer some tough questions.
Totally. Yeah. And then, in my opinion, there's no better time really to start a startup than as a college student. Not only can you use the student card like you mentioned, but you're not going to be starting a family, and you're not, in any sense, if you're starting young enough, putting aside a career in another field. So I think it's a super cool opportunity. But to anyone out there who is a student watching this, what advice would you give them if they were interested in starting their own company?
Don't think twice. I think you have to come into something, and if you have a significant idea, do your research, talk to some people. But the best way you're going to learn is to just do it. And I don't want to trademark Nike there, but is really just to immerse yourself and just try it out. I mean, I always, and I've told you this many times, is that I have a difficulty learning in the traditional educational environment, whether it's through lecture or whatnot. And the way that I best learn is through kind of hands-on experience. So this is how I kind of immerse myself, and I genuinely enjoy learning. And so, it's an element of kind of curiosity and not just ignoring that curiosity. But don't set up these mental barriers. Don't say you can't do something because for some, arbitrary kind of reason. Just try it out, figure it out. And honestly, if it fails, let me tell you, the experience you're going to get is priceless, and the people you're going to meet, if you want to get a job in corporate America, they're going to help you do that. So, so there's really, yeah. So I mean, it's you get a well-rounded MBA by starting something.
Totally, dude. No, in starting this YouTube channel, I spent almost 6 or closer to 9 months.
Yeah.
Just getting it launched. I told myself, like, oh, I want to do it right when I start it. Totally. And what I didn't realize is that, you know, in the first month of launching the channel, I learned almost as much as I did in the first 9 months, like, getting there.
Totally.
So I think that is great advice. Like, if you have a good idea, and you have a drive, don't waste any time. Get right to it.
Don't hesitate to dive in and do research and ask tough questions to people that are already in the space. I mean, cold emailing, cold LinkedIn messaging, that can get you pretty far. So
totally. Yeah, and if you don't mind me asking you a fun question.
Yeah.
What would you say has been like some of the craziest things that have happened in this entire journey?
Yeah. Just in terms of, you know, I don't know, places or people or
any stories, experiences, or people you've met or talked to that you might want to bring up?
Yeah, totally. So we had early on in the days of Shred, the last mile kind of on-demand longboard experience. This is honestly, frankly, before we had any sort of advisors. So it was literally just Connor, you know, myself and Chase, and we were just kind of shooting for the moon, right? So we did a ton of research on investors and really had no idea the aspect of that's another thing too is getting intros from reputable people to investors really helps that conversation. But we didn't have any concept of that. So we're like, you know what if we just emailed some people that have some significant funds, you know, high net worth individuals that have some business experience, and you know, see what happens. And so a few of those people, God, I want to say were like Ryan Sheckler and he's a skateboarder. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Ryan Sheckler, but Sean White and people in the action sports space, but also kind of just, you know, people in the business space. So we emailed Ariana Huffington, who obviously she's founder and I don't know if she's CEO. I know she's founder of the Huffington Post, and does a multitude of things. She started Thrive Global. Mark Cuban was another one, just shooting for the moon. Gary Vaynerchuk, and we didn't get responses from the prior, but we actually got responses from Ariana Huffington and Mark Cuban. Oh my gosh! And Ariana Huffington is like the nicest woman ever, and so she was like, I think she started the email with "sweetest" or "dearest Adam." It was so awesome.
That's awesome.
And she's like, I love this. Keep pushing forward. Unfortunately, you know, we know I don't do much investing personally, but
but she emailed you personally.
Yeah, she was great. She connected me with a few people in Thrive Global because it's an awesome organization for students that are kind of like, you know, or just young people that are kind of like you and I that start things or do things, and there's a lot of stress behind that, obviously, and so it's kind of an outlet, and there's some great articles and podcasts that they help with mindfulness and mental health. So Thrive Global is great. But of course, Mark Cuban, that was the nuts, crazy one.
And it's insane. Shark Tank Mark, right?
Oh, I literally. So it's this funny story. So I was in class at UVO, and again, back to my story of I don't really learn well. I was on my phone, of course, not paying attention really to class, and I was kind of scrolling, and I have email notifications on my phone, so I just get them kind of like a text notification, and all of a sudden I saw an email back. It was like Mark Cuban. I'm like, is somebody messing with me? This is a joke. Way. And so he just started asking me just laser quick questions. You know, I think it was like, what's the go-to-market strategy? How are you going to expand outward? Why focus on universities? Why boards? Just all these great questions. And of course, I literally leave class. I'm like answering all these. I'm calling Connor, my co-founder.
Oh, no
like,
way you're gonna stay in class.
I'm like, help me get these questions. He's like, hurry up, respond. So we would just, and I would just keep refreshing, and he would just email back. And we probably had like a 30 email exchange, and unfortunately he obviously didn't invest, or else I'd probably be somewhere else, but I mean, nonetheless, an unforgettable experience, and had some really actionable advice that I still remember to this day. And one thing was that, like I said, we got 6 LOIs. He said just to focus on one university and then go from there, which we actually kind of reoriented into our strategy at the time, and we were doing boards.
Kind of like a proof of concept idea.
Yeah, and then kind of go from there and expand outward. So anyways, that was just a ridiculous,
oh my gosh.
that was a ridiculous experience, but yeah, that's pretty much it. We've had a few other interesting things we ran into. So Gary Vaynerchuk didn't respond to my email.
Okay, as a YouTuber, I was about to ask.
Yeah, but we actually ran into him pretty much physically at South by Southwest. He was walking, and one of my buddies was hilarious. Was actually vlogging, and was like, "Oh my God, it's Gary!" And we like literally ran up to him. He's like, "What's up, vlog?" And we were just kind of in. It was in the heat of the moment, so I didn't mention anything about our thing. But yeah, that was crazy too. We also so cool. ran into Ashton Kutcher and Matthew McConaughey and Mark Benioff, who's the founder of Salesforce. Yeah. I mean, there's just some crazy people. Hopefully, when the virus kind of subsides and South by Southwest reignites itself, can go back and just reconnect. I mean, there's amazing people there. Yeah,
that's so cool. Yeah, you mentioned having advisors earlier in this interview. How important would you say mentorship and that whole arena is in starting your own business?
Hugely important, because as somebody that's young, you're going to be scattered. You're going to have tons of ideas, and they'll help keep you on track and keep pushing you forward and also help kind of. Look forward from like a problematic sense. So be like, hey, when you launch this or when you do this, you might want to take these things into consideration because they might arise, and they're usually challenges, and they just help define the difficulties that are going to come forward when you launch something like this. And honestly, I mean, like I said, entrepreneurship and starting a company can be kind of lonely, stressful, strenuous, all those buzzwords, but they kind of offer that backbone. You can call them up, you can text them anytime and be like, hey, you've been through this, how do you deal with this kind of stress, this lack of sleep, this fun day, whatever the difficulty is, and they're always there to help you out. So it's pretty awesome, but it takes time to build those relationships, that's for sure.
Totally. Yeah, no, that's very good advice. So Adam, a huge focus of our YouTube channel is side hustles, and I'm a huge advocate for them. I think they're awesome. Yeah. But would you say that like you've had this entrepreneurial spirit and there's a history of that as a child or in school? Have you ever had any side hustles that you would say maybe contributed to starting a startup and helped you learn in any way?
100%. So, yeah, I mean, as early as, and I don't even remember this, my parents had to tell me, but gosh, I think I was probably 6 years old or 7 years old, and we've got a beach house on the Oregon coast, and I used to love finding agates on the beach. And my dad and I bought this rock tumbler, and so it kind of shined them up, made them look really nice, and we put them in a vase, and it kind of had this just really nice little artistic.
They're hard to find, I think. Right?
A little pretty hard to find, but I was short and at the time, and so you're really close to the ground. So and I would literally, I mean, I think I took a plastic bucket, turned it over, and put these like little vases full of shined up rocks and sold them for like a couple bucks. And,
no way.
Yeah, and of course our neighbors were nice enough to come over and be like, "Oh my God, what are you doing? This is cool." So I always say that a lot of kids like to sell lemonade, but I thought that was saturated, so I sold rocks.
I love it. That's awesome.
But yeah, that was one of them. And I had a little detailing gig with a couple buddies for probably like half of high school. And I know that we did Deco a lot together, and so that I mean all these YBW, there's a ton of things that I could just push credit to really building kind of and shaping who I am today. So definitely.
Totally. Are there any other resources that you think would be good for anyone interested in this area like I am?
Yeah. To look into? Watch Nolan's videos. That'll be great, and you'll learn a lot. But honestly, I think that's something that's really, really underrated. Is that I am a consumer of social media as well. I don't have a video game console, but I know some people like that. But once in a while, put that down and maybe just immerse yourself in a book and learn something, or watch an informational YouTube video, or go chat with somebody that you're interested about the career, because that can go a long, long way and open up other doors. And listen to podcasts, I could keep going on and on, but from a high level, I think that's something that is, again, just is overlooked and underrated, especially in today's day and age where we have all these things, vying for our attention. But yeah, I would say invest a little bit more time in your self-curiosity, because we all have curiosity, we all have interests, and just immerse yourself in those things. So
I'm totally on board there with you. Are there any books in particular that you might recommend?
Ooh, great question.
It's a tough one.
Man, something. So I love. Man, good question. There's one that I always loved was 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. Well, he's kind of an interesting political figure nowadays. He has quite the investment past. He's a very, very renowned private investor. Oh, wow. One of the original founders of PayPal, kind of with the with the PayPal mafia. With
I knew that name.
Yeah, with Reid Hoffman and Elon Musk and Keith Rabb. I forgot how to say his last name, but all these just ridiculously innovative individuals. He's got a great book called 0 to 1 that just talks about the importance of innovation on a larger scale. So in terms of the way that you innovate and start a company should not be with the intent to have a 10% increase in, you know, what you're working on. It should be, you know, 100% increase. There should be a multitude of difference that you're creating that much more value and adding that much more value in the marketplace.
I love it.
Yeah, so that's a fantastic book. A plethora of autobiographies. Steve Jobs is a fantastic one.
Yeah.
Although he's a very interesting individual. So some great stories, great analogies, great quotes in the inception of Apple and you know, being kind of the CEO of Pixar for a while too.
Yeah.
And then the book on Elon Musk is interesting.
It's a good one.
I think that you can't go wrong with Jeff Bezos's. I think it's The Amazon Way.
Okay.
But oh my gosh, I mean, it's just all these books are just amazing, just really interesting. I would just say whatever piques your interest, whether it's a person, an industry, or even, you know, I mean, it could be building a YouTube channel, it could be art. Could be botany, could be something with plants. Just immerse yourself and be curious and attack that curiosity.
There's a quote, it's from a very public figure, I can't remember who it is.
Yeah.
But it says, to become the best at something, you have to put in 10,000 hours.
Yeah. I feel like Warren Buffett said that, didn't he?
Was it Warren Buffett?
Maybe. I don't know. Don't call me on that. But
I should know who it is, regardless. It's someone big.
Yeah.
But I think that's such an interesting point. That doesn't necessarily need to be, you know, hands-on phone calls, things like that. It can be books, just absorbing content related to something you're interested in. In order to make you the best possible person at it.
Totally. Yeah. So, I love that quote. And I think early on when we're young, it is okay to spread yourself wide and be curious about a lot of things. But yeah, I think as you progress, you know, while others have that ability to kind of immerse themselves, you know, in a multitude of things, I also see a huge benefit in focusing on maybe a couple things or a few things and really investing a lot of time into those things. So.
Totally. Awesome. Well, Adam, thank you so much for coming on here today. Those are all the questions I have. But before we really wrap up, any final thoughts, advice, anything you might want to throw out there?
Ooh. I feel like I've kind of touched on a little bit of everything, but yeah, I mean, the biggest thing I can say is the biggest barrier to anything is the self, is your own mental barriers you put up. So just don't listen to those things. Seek discomfort and keep moving forward and bettering yourself. So
I love it. Well, dude, thanks again. Really enjoyed this interview. Hopefully it isn't the last one. We'll see.
Absolutely not. Yeah, thanks for having me.
But yeah, I really appreciate it, man. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you. Thanks, Nolan.